Neither of them seem to be stable human beings. So recounting their relationship is intriguing. And then on top of that, Johnny Depp has actually been really funny in the courtroom. A very dry sense of humor, which actually we have a quick clip to show just kind of what the atmosphere of the courtroom has been. So if you want to play that clip to our people in the booth. Do we have the clip?
You were drinking pretty heavily.
Were you there? That's hearsay, I guess.
I know if it's sure it's offered for the truth of the matter asserted.
He got it.
Okay, all right, well then.
I'm learning.
There you go.
Let me ask you a different question, Mr. Depp.
Yes. Let's let him object to another one.
So, as you can see, it's just Johnny Depp seems to be very confident in his case. He's kind of like almost taking this laughingly. But he has accused Amber Heard of being the abuser in the relationship, of being physically abusive, along with emotionally, verbally, all of that. And there's been lots of audio clips from their arguments. Apparently they recorded their arguments, or at least some of them. She would record their arguments of both of them yelling at each other, accusing each other of, she admits in one clip that she hit him, slapped him. And there's testimony from other witnesses, including bodyguards, friends who are, saying what they've seen. Some of them have seen in the past bruises, scratches on Johnny Depp, but never anything on Amber Heard. Often overheard fights between the couple. So all of this to sum up, it seems that both of them were abusive to each other. But the thing is that you'll see a lot of people, starting to side with Johnny Depp, particularly because until he came forward with accusations against Amber Heard, everyone was just like, oh, Johnny Depp is an abusive husband. He's just terrible. And everyone kind of took Amber Heard at face value. And now that we see the narrative kind of finally being reversed, and everyone's calling Amber Heard, just an awful terrorist. And so it's been quite the trial.
I think that it is interesting that you mentioned that there has been definitely a noticeable shift, and it's probably a little bit of a result of people taking things at face value a little bit too much and taking the narrative that is currently popular and running with that, without kind of having this nuanced thought about it. When the stuff first came out about Johnny Depp, everyone was like, this must be true, he must be an abuser. Now people are saying, well, he must be completely innocent, and it must be that Amber Heard is the abuser. And don't get me wrong, I think that Amber Heard is a crazy person, and I think that she's definitely guilty of abusing him in some ways. But I think that, like you said, there's definitely some fault to go around from both people in this relationship. And I think that, it's not always as simple as it's clearly this person who's the abuser and this person who's a victim. I think that it was a toxic relationship that probably was hard on both of them. And I think both of them have a little bit of fault to share. So I think that that's something that I haven't really heard a lot of people saying. A lot of people are choosing one side or the other, but I feel like it's definitely a little bit of both, to be honest.
Right. And I feel like that's just the terror of our media now, is that everyone is set up, especially if you're a celebrity or any sort of public figure, that it's all black or white. Either Johnny Depp is completely innocent, just a little lamb who was just horribly abused by a monster, or vice versa. There's like no gray area. And there's no room for like, well, I mean, this is kind of a bad situation on both sides, which is what it is. And statistically, because I'm always a stats person, if you look at domestic abuse in general, most researchers, therapists, counselors agree that most abuse inside of a relationship happens bidirectionally. Of course, yeah, one partner can be more abusive than the other, but it's almost, I think it's, like 58% of the time, if not more, it's both partners abusing each other. So just based off of kind of common sense and, abuse patterns, this is a really messy relationship. And, I don't think anybody can really be like, oh, we're all for one or the other. It's a little insane.
Yeah, I think it's also indicative of a larger shift that happened in the past in society and that's now shifting towards the other way, kind of the same way that this trial went, and that is the whole MeToo movement.
Right.
When all this first started coming out about these things that are happening in Hollywood and women are being mistreated, obviously some terrible things going on and things that no one would ever condone. No one who's, got any sense of moral compass would condone any of those things. But I think that the danger is we swung so far at that point that it was believe all women. Every woman who makes an accusation against a man, it must be true, and guilty until proven innocent, all this stuff. And then you kind of see the consequences of that. You see that women in that case have too much power in the sense that they can make up an allegation against anyone and they can be taken completely seriously and they can ruin that person's career. And that's not good either. We don't want that either. So I think that we keep seeing this shift one way and then shift the other way. Hopefully we're going towards a place where it'll be a little bit back towards what we want the justice system to be, which is we hear an accusation, we assume innocence, but we go to trial and we see what the evidence leads us to find. And I think that is the way that the justice system should be in America. This way it's supposed to be in America. Unfortunately, it's swung back and forth away from that, but I'm hoping that maybe we're getting a little bit more towards that traditional style.
Right. So I think this is just, we see this trial, obviously this is, the big headlines right now, but it's just kind of the symptom of the Me Too movement, because I think the whole movement just kind of turned the American justice principle of innocent till proven guilty completely on its head, of now, especially for men, you are guilty until proven innocent. And I think that actually the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case is like a perfect example of that, even though I'm not fully on the side of either one of them. And I shouldn't have to be. I shouldn't have to take a side.
You shouldn't have to be picking whose side
I just
you're
want to
on.
note that. But regardless of that, I mean, there is definitely the idea of, Johnny Depp as being the one accused and being the male in the relationship, is the one having to do the legwork to provide a lot of evidence to prove that maybe I was abused too. Maybe this hurt my career too. Whereas in 2016, when they first divorced, Amber Heard gave almost no evidence of abuse. She just claimed that she was abused. And then just like that, a judge gave her a restraining order against Johnny Depp. They settled the divorce for $7 million, which she got, of course. And so, sure, maybe she was abused. Maybe she did deserve all of that. But there was no real legwork of like, okay, well, here, let's prove it. Whereas Johnny Depp now is having to do all the legwork of, you have to prove you were abused.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit murkier in this particular case because he's suing her for defamation. And so I understand to some extent why he would have to present, the evidence. But like you said, in that initial case, I don't think she ever sued him for domestic abuse. She just divorced him. Is that right?
Yeah, divorced him and made him pay more in the divorce settlement. She kept upping it.
So I think that and then just a lot of the cases that you see where a woman, whether it's a woman in Hollywood or even just, in colleges, we see it a lot. A woman accuses a man of doing something to her that is inappropriate. And it should be that the burden of proof is on that woman to say, this is the evidence that proves that this happened. Instead, somehow it's become that the burden of proof is on the man to prove that he didn't do that, which is not how it's supposed to work at all.
Right. And it's just, if you're accused of anything, you're just stuck in an awful trap. Whether you deny it or don't deny it, it's kind of like a lose-lose game for you to start. I was looking at some people who were talking about how they had been kind of caught in, I was falsely accused of abuse. It was totally false, but, whatever, it sunk my career anyways. And Alan Dershowitz, the, famous star lawyer, he had a really interesting quote that I was like, that's a good point. He said, if you call a woman a liar, even if you didn't do what you're being accused of, you're guilty of calling a woman a liar, so there's no way out. If you don't deny it, you're thought to be guilty. If you do deny it, you've committed an additional political sin, so it's a trap. And just like he's right. It's kind of a trap. There's no way out. And that's what the Me Too movement has toxically created. It's just like traps everywhere for anybody who's accused of any sort of abuse.
It's something that you see, in my opinion, from all of these leftist movements, from the Me Too movement to the BLM movement, all these things, they start at a point that we should all be able to agree with. Whether it's
Exactly.
Women should not be abused, and if they are abused, they should be able to speak about it, and there should be consequences for the man. We all agree with that. Or it's black people should not be treated differently than white people. They should not be oppressed. And if there is a racism that goes on, then that should be called out and that should be addressed at the source. We all agree with that. It's then they take these and they move it into an area that it's so toxic
Right.
that you no longer can even support what should be a supportable claim because they've moved it so far that it's just impossible to get behind what they're trying to do.
Right. And I feel like that's kind of, in a way, a lot of these movements that come from the progressive left, it's a good way of self-destructing because they just get so blown up and then all of a sudden people are like, wait a second. But the problem is that at their inception, you're right. They do kind of start with that grain of truth of, ooh, yeah, women shouldn't be abused. You're absolutely right about that. Yes, there shouldn't be racial inequality. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And then all of a sudden, boom, you've brainwashed, half the culture and everyone's like, all right, we are on board. And no one likes being a bandwagoner. No one likes being a fair weather fan. So they're just like, we're going to stick it out no matter what the movement does. Now, eventually, hopefully with the Me Too movement, even though it's still reeling, I feel like it'll eventually kind of come back to bite itself. And I think that the Depp Heard case is could be a highlight of that, of kind of like, ooh, this is starting to get out of control. This is no longer just black and white. So, but it's a dangerous game that we play.
Well, you've already seen some, and this could be a whole nother discussion. You've seen people who are accused or even have admitted to doing something that is wrong, whether it's not necessarily sexual abuse, that pretty much will end your career, but like sexual harassment. You see people who admitted to doing this and their career was paused, but it's not over.
Right.
It's they can come back from it now. And we can have a whole discussion on whether that's good or bad or how we feel about that, but I think that you're seeing a little bit, people are being like, all right, if somebody does something bad and then they apologize and they go to therapy and they do whatever they need to do, then, it's not a terrible thing to forgive them. Some people are starting to come around to that idea, and it's an interesting shift that we're seeing.
It is an interesting shift, although I do still question whether it can ever really shift back to kind of like, all right, we'll let them back into society, because there's just the animosity against people is so strong, and once you're tainted, even if it was based on a false accusation, it's like, ooh, that always lingers of oh well, Johnny Depp was accused of that, even if it was completely false. That's what he'll always be branded as a wife beater.
Yeah, that definitely, it doesn't go away. People remember that. I think that's something that will just be with you for the rest of your life. But at least, the example that I'm thinking of is Louis C.K.
That's true.
You see, this person's able to tour again. This person's able to come out with another special. At the height of the Me Too movement, I feel like that would have never happened. Louis C.K. would never have made another special. He would never have gone on tour again. At least now, hopefully, I don't know Louis C.K. personally. I don't know that much about his journey. Hopefully, he did what he needed to do to get himself right, and now he's able to have a second chance, which I believe in. I believe in second chances. But like you said, yeah, there's still going to be, it's going to be tainted a little bit.
Right. And I mean, that's just kind of the evil of being a public figure, being a celebrity, is that bad press, and it never really goes away. And it's hard to build up credibility after that. Even if you're proven completely innocent. And it's playing with fire. The whole MeToo movement and anything where you stray into sexual abuse, sexual assault, any accusations of that, you're just playing with fire. And I just want to run around telling people, like, you better be darn sure before you make any accusations, because it's just doesn't normally end up great in the end for anybody who's involved.
I think another interesting portion of this trial, like we discussed a little bit, is that Johnny Depp is suing Amber Heard for defamation, for accusing him of these abuses that he says he did not commit. He previously sued the UK Sun for libel for calling him a wife beater, and he actually lost.
Right.
And I think that brings up an interesting point of, even if Johnny Depp is able to prove or is able to convince the jury that he did not abuse Amber Heard, it's not necessarily a shoo-in that he wins a libel case or a defamation case. Those are hard to win, and that's a whole different subject for sure. But I think it's we're seeing more of them lately, and I'm wondering if we'll see a shift. I want to know what you think, as far as usually, especially libel and defamation also, but especially libel against like a major publication like the UK Sun. You don't see cases like that are successful very often. Do you think that we're seeing a shift where maybe there will be more success with those kind of cases, or do you think it'll just be more of the same?
I think there could be a small shift, because I think there are enough people waking up to the idea that media is getting more extreme, and in their reporting, in their labeling of people, that I think there is going to be a little bit of a shift of like, okay, maybe media and, outlets like the UK Sun shouldn't be able to just label people as a wife beater. And the whole idea behind defamation and libel, if you're a public figure, is that you have to prove that a publication or outlet did it with an intent of malice, not just like, oh, they accidentally mislabeled you that, which is what normally outlets will kind of argue, is they're like, well, that was kind of an accident. We didn't really mean to. We're sorry. Retraction. But you have to be able to prove, no, they did it with malice and with the intent of trying to harm me and my career, which is exactly what Johnny Depp's doing with Amber Heard. He's saying, no, she intentionally wrote the Washington Post piece in order to hurt me and hurt my career, and she did it intentionally, purposefully, thoughtfully. Whereas I think his case with the Sun is a little different. But I do think that there is going to be a shift in defamation and libel cases, because I think people are waking up to the fact that media is just getting extreme, and they are being more intentional about maliciously screwing over people. And I think the political atmosphere, particularly after, love him or hate him, the Donald Trump era, kind of pulled the mask off of some media of like, oh, I guess the media is not all that afraid of going after people and crucifying them. And so I think with that in mind, people may start to shift a little bit with the idea of defamation and libel cases and who will and won't win them.
I think it's particularly interesting to me in the context of conservatism, because I think it is a little bit, it kind of fights against each other. Conservatives kind of have different ideas on this. And an example is, I was even working on a story today, this new disinformation council or board, whatever he's calling it, that Biden has made, where he's appointed this partisan leftist to be head of the disinformation board, and they're going to decide, what's disinformation, what needs to be censored. Obviously, that is terrible. We don't want that. That sounds like a communist country, and that's not something we want in America. At the same time, you have Donald Trump. I remember when he was running in 2020, and I think in 2016, he would say a lot of times, the media needs to be held accountable. The media shouldn't be able to just lie about me and then get away with it. Typically, the First Amendment has been interpreted to protect the media if they make a false claim about a political candidate. Usually, they are not, held criminally responsible for that unless there's a successful libel case.
Right.
I think I don't know. I don't know what my opinion is on it. It's just interesting to me that as a conservative, I don't want the government telling me what's disinformation, but I also can be sympathetic to Donald Trump's point and a lot of conservatives' point that, I don't want outlets who are super influential to be able to just lie and tell people things that aren't true either. So I don't know what the
Exactly.
answer is. It's a tough question.
It's tough, and it's kind of the catch-22 because you have to have the media protected by free speech. Like, if you want a free society, you have to have that because even though we now see that a lot of media is corrupt, you can't live in a society. You can't go back to the USSR. No one wants to live in the USSR where it's just propaganda, and people can't be exposed for corruption, and people can't get real information. It's your hands are kind of tied because it's like the media has to be protected, but as soon as you protect the media, then they can take it so far into just going after people and spreading disinformation when they feel like it, and they become sort of untouchable. And so it's like a impossible catch-22 that I feel like people have found themselves in.
To me, I think the answer is a little bit what we were talking about earlier, which is these libel and defamation cases. Maybe you see judges soften a little bit, not changing the burden of proof or anything, but just historically, these publications who have good lawyers are not found guilty of libel. I think maybe, I think the system is good. The fact that you need to prove that they not only said something that was false, but did so with malice in order to hurt you.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
a good system.
That's a good system. I think maybe judges need to shift a little bit in the way that they interpret it to be a little bit more favorable to the person who is suing the outlet or whoever it may be.
Yeah.
Maybe we see that and that helps a little bit. I'm not sure.
I feel like I think we're kind of on the brink of a really big change in the media landscape. I mean, people have been saying that for the past 10 years, but I think we really are at this point. Because it's not just, the principles of media and free speech and people's careers that we're talking about anymore. All this information is monetized at the end of the day. This is affecting the actual marketplace because media makes so much money and they're affecting everybody else who makes money. And every corporation, every celebrity, every public figure, every politician. And it's just information is money. And so I feel like that is starting to dawn upon people a little bit, which I think will start to change the landscape of thinking when you approach the media in legal situations with defamation and libel. It's kind of the old principle of, follow the money. And so I feel like we're starting to get onto the brink of that, of people are like, okay, well, we see that the media can be corrupt. Okay, that's step one. Okay, so information's really valuable. Okay, so this is all tied to money. It's like, and I think that's going to really, really shift kind of how things are going to proceed in the future.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. I think just to wrap up, I want to ask you, I know that you've been looking into this trial
Too much.
between
I know
Depp and Heard, probably more than I have. I've looked into it some, but I don't think to the extent that you have. You're preparing to do some reporting on that, which is great. I want to ask you, and then I'll answer as well. What if you had to predict the outcome of this trial? What do you think it will be?
Oh goodness, I think Johnny Depp will probably win the case. I would be a little surprised if he didn't, honestly. At this point, the general public is so vehemently in favor for him. And it has kind of turned into a clown show and a complete soap opera. And there is enough evidence that his career has clearly been damaged by her accusations that it's like, well, I think this is kind of a no-brainer. Even, Amber Heard still has to testify next week, I believe. And there's still kind of a lot of things that will probably be dredged up in the drama. But I would be a little surprised if Johnny Depp didn't win the case.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he'll win. I think that even we showed those clips of him, joking in the courtroom and stuff. Maybe he's a little bit too confident, but I think the response to that, you see a courtroom, and most of that is the gallery. It's not the jury, so I'm not saying this is definite, but you see a courtroom that is sympathetic towards his cause, I think, a little bit. You don't, like, if they believed he was a violent abuser, I don't think that you would see people giggling or, like, smiling at what he's doing. They would say, this guy is the worst. How dare he be making jokes about this? And there's some of that, I'm sure, from people who don't like him. But for the most part, I'm seeing more of a sympathetic response towards him, and I'm feeling like the jury is probably going to follow that.
Right. And, I mean, you got to give credit to Johnny Depp. He was really smart in suing Amber Heard as an individual for defamation. This case would be totally different if he had sued the Washington Post. I don't think he'd have a shot at all at winning this. But the fact that he's suing an individual is completely different. And kind of all bets are off when you sue an individual because you're like, oh, okay, that's a lot easier to prove.
Absolutely. Well, that's all we have here today on wjlive. We thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed what you heard, the discussions we were able to have, you can get more of that content, get our written reporting at www.westernjournal.com. That's where we put all of our stories, everything you can read up on this trial, all the news of the day. And if you feel led to support us, you can go to westernjournal.com/join, and there's a couple of subscription options for you there. Not a requirement to read the things that we have or anything like that.
But you should feel led to join us.
But you should. I mean,
if you like us,
if you
join
like
us.
it would be great. So that's always a plus. As far as YouTube, Rumble, if you guys are watching on any of those, just go ahead and hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon so that it'll tell you when we're going to be going live so that you don't miss any of our episodes. We are live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, and we will be back here on Monday next week to bring you the latest news. Thanks again for tuning in, and have a good weekend.